What's up, guys? Thought I'd switch it up this time and I'd give you a narration. I think some people have been complaining because they're bored of the on-screen instructions, so I'm gonna switch it up a little bit this time. I haven't had much time to post any new content and I apologize. So what I did on this last video is I recorded myself on the last XD Plus that I modded. What I'm going to show you on this video are the three mods. It's going to be the Conductive Replacement mod, the Thermal mod, and the Abxy Win 2 mod. Now, in case you guys were curious, or anyone who's curious, this is the 2019 model of the XD Plus. If you look at it, it's not black, it's actually dark gray, and it's not glossy on the top. It has a matte finish. It's not shiny. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to show you guys the easiest way to disassemble the XD. Now, I've taken the XD and the XD Plus apart quite a few times and I've screwed a lot of things up. So I basically learn off of that and I learn what not to do. Right here, to initially open the XD, I use the area right above the left or the right shoulder buttons. It seems like the easiest place to get the pry tool in. Once you get it in, just pry it open just a little bit, enough to hear the initial snap of that corner snap, and then you can get your second pry tool to help you open up the rest of the XD Plus. Now, be careful on how you open it or how much pressure you put on it, because you don't want to launch the left or right shoulder button across the room. Also, I'd ask, please don't use anything metal on it. I don't know what people use on it, but I've seen like bite marks on the edges, and it just totally ruins the case. Try and get something soft like a guitar pick or something plastic. The best thing to use is just the pry tools that you can get. They're very cheap. Just look online. You should be able to find a cheap set somewhere on Amazon or AliExpress. Just keep sliding that pry tool across the edge of the case and open it clip at a time. First thing you're going to want to unplug is the battery cable. At least that's what I found is the easiest way to open it. Just give it a yank upwards. It shouldn't take that much pressure. Then you have to flip it around and get the shoulder ribbons. Now, this is where a lot of people end up breaking their ribbons because they open the case prematurely. You want to go ahead and unfasten those first. That way you don't end up having to send it to me to get it repaired. From this angle, the snaps will go up and the ribbons will slide down. So just pull on them, give it a little pressure, they should pop out. If not, use tweezers. That's what I used. I've had a lot of people break the ribbons because they forget to unfasten the clips first. From here, the disassembly is a lot easier. You just have to unfasten the screen ribbon and the two joystick ribbons. Those are pretty easy. The snap for the screen ribbon at this angle goes back and the joystick goes up. You could use tweezers to remove them. The hardest thing that I had to remove on the XD Plus recently has been the speaker cables. Now, I've actually broken a few and had to send them back to get repaired because they're soldered really flimsy, and so when I go to unfasten it by popping it up, I end up just ripping the whole attachment off of the motherboard. So in this video I'm going to show you what I do. I end up using a needle, and I just end up bringing it up a little bit at a time. I just try to stick it on the side, bring up the plug just a little bit, and as soon as I see it come up just a little bit, I put that needle on the gap right underneath it and then pop it all the way off. Just make sure that the needle is actually in that gap, because if you go underneath it, you'll end up doing what I did and just pop up the whole connector off. The Wi-Fi connection is pretty easy. Just pick it off, use your nail or something. Just want to give you guys a warning. I've been taking XDs apart for a while, and I work at a pretty fast pace. So don't try to work at the same pace as I do, or you're gonna break something. Once you have all those screws unscrewed, you can go ahead and just visually make sure you have all the ribbons and cables unplugged. You don't want to yank something out. Then you can go ahead and lift the motherboard. Just lift it up like the hood of a car. Once you have it up, then you can pull out. Just be careful. A lot of times those conductive pads stick to the board, so do the buttons. I try to keep everything together. So this next mod is the Abxy mod, and I switch out the XD buttons for the Win2 buttons. Now when I first did this, I wanted it to be just a cosmetic mod. I mean, they just look so much better, they look more gamey. But it turns out after I switched them out and a conductive pad underneath it, for me it just feels a lot better. I don't know, I'll have to ask more people as I sell them for their feedback, but personally I think it's a really good mod and it just feels so much better. When I had first put them on, they were a little harder to press, but it was just because the slots weren't going in as far as the XD one, so all I do is take the Win2 buttons and I cut into the slots a little more, a little deeper, and they work perfectly. For the Conductive Pad mod, I ended up using, for every mod I use 3 sets. I use a Nintendo DS Lite pad that belongs to the Abxy, but I put it underneath the D-pad for the XD. For the Abxy for the XD, I end up using a Wiimote pad that goes to the number 1 and 2, and it's only 2 conductive buttons, so I need to use 2 sets of the Wiimote conductive pads. So altogether I use 3 sets of conductive pads for the whole mod. So for the 1 and 2 pads, they have a little edge on them, so I have to trim them out. So the reason for this mod is because the original XD and the XD Plus conductive pads are kind of what people report them to be mushy. So by switching them out, you firm up the buttons and they're a little harder to press, which is just better for gaming, I guess. I like it. This is the final mod. This is the thermal pad mod, and the idea behind it is to put the thermal pads on top of the heat shield. The heat that'll bring up the heat to the case. So when you do this mod, you're actually, the case of the XD will actually get hotter, but that's because you're taking it away from the CPU and the RAM. As far as how much this actually cools the CPU, I'm not certain. I do plan on modifying the case later to try and maybe make some vents to allow more heat to come out, but for now this will have to do. On this next part, I'm going to go ahead and show you the vulnerability that the XD and the XD Plus has. They assemble it the same way as they did with the Generation 1 XD, and what they do is they run the ribbon cable between a pad and the bottom of the joystick. Now on this video I'm going to go ahead and show you that the bottom of the joystick has a metal piece and it has a little tab that sticks out. That tab will push into the ribbon, so when you apply pressure to the joystick, it's digging that tab into the ribbon. You can also, every time you open the lid and close the lid, you also flex the ribbon, and with time the ribbon will go bad or you'll create a short. Later in the video I remedy that by putting a piece of tape after the metal tab and before the ribbon. Then I put the ribbon, then I put the pad. That helps keep the tab from digging into the ribbon. To put the motherboard back, you're going to have to put those ports up top into their slots, then slide the board down. Make sure not to pinch any ribbons. The most annoying ones are usually the speaker ones or the Wi-Fi cable. Just pull them out. Be careful with the speaker ones. I've had the wires pull out on accident. I use a clamp here to kind of squeeze the motherboard into the case because those pads are a tiny bit too thick. I just kind of smush them into place. I don't put too much pressure. I don't want to break the motherboard. It's just gentle pressure. I do just a quick check to make sure that the conductive pads are lined up, because when you put that motherboard in, sometimes they slip. You want to make sure they're lined up. If not, you're going to have to take the board apart again, realign them, and then screw it down again. So before you put any screws in, make sure that all the conductive pads are lined up properly. Reassembling the XD should be a lot easier. You don't have to mess with the speaker cables. I mean, they just push right in. So basically you just work in reverse. Put all the screws in, make sure all the ribbons are in place, make sure that all the ribbons are in place. I'll say it again, make sure they're in place. I don't know how many times I've had to take the XD apart because I forgot to put the Wi-Fi cable or one of the speaker cables weren't properly pushed in. This is the fix that I was telling you about. I use, and it's a canvas electrical tape. I think it's pretty much the same thing that they use, that black tape that's on the motherboard right now. I just put it on top of the metal part, then I lay the ribbon down, then I put the padding over it. I try to put the ribbon, I actually plug it in first to make sure that I'm not pulling on it. Once it's in there, I could just, once it's snug, then I put the pad over it to hold it into place. You want to give it a little bit of slack. Like I said, from here on out, it's just working in reverse. Just make sure all the ribbons are fastened properly. And be careful with those clips, those tiny little black clips, or the part that snaps into place. There's been a bunch of people that just pull them out on accident. They're kind of delicate. The Wi-Fi cable, just pops in. Make sure it's lined up, then push it in. The same goes for the speaker connectors, just pop them in. So there you have it. I narrated the video. Please let me know what you think. Personally, I'm not comfortable speaking, but hey, whatever you guys want. I did the on-screen instructions. Please let me know what you like better, on-screen instructions or me narrating, or both. Now that I have my own space set up, I'm going to try to put these more videos out more often. So if you have any suggestions for any upcoming videos, please let me know in the comments. If you haven't already, like the video if you thought it was useful, if it helped you out. Subscribe if you want. So I think that's it. So this is Psyop signing out.